So, welcome to an EcoDharma exploration. We do these once a month on a Sunday, usually the fourth Sunday of the month, and it's a wonderful space to that's been going on for now like 4 years to explore the intersection of ecology and Dharma, so-called EcoDharma. My name is Kristen Barker. I'm the co-founder and director of One Earth Sangha, the host organization, and we're doing these as well with two organizational partners, Spirit Rock Meditation Center and Braided Wisdom. So you'll start to see their programming coming in more and more as have just agreed to do another year of these because it seems to be going pretty well. So really, really just a heartfelt welcome to all of you. I am joining from the Potomac watershed, also known as Washington, D.C. This is historic lands of the Piscataway people, and I am grateful to them for their loving this land into its well-being that we so much presently enjoy. And I'm going to bring in my favorite ecological relative. I was doing a practice called soul making dharma earlier this week with the tree that is right outside this window, and we have so much history together, me and this tree. So I just want to acknowledge that you're in relationship with me, and I am deeply shaped by this particular being. And then I want to bring in the founder of Soul Making Dharma, the shaper of that work. His name is Rob Burbea, and he created the Soul Making Dharma teachers. He came out of Gaia House, and I am always wanting to appreciate him and his teachers and the lineage, the deep lineage that goes all the way back to the Buddha. He was influenced by Zen and Insight um, traditions, which are present with us here today. So, with that, I will welcome the team members that are here with us. Nikayla Jefferson is our head of programming and a wonderful, exciting contributor to the work of One Earth Sangha, and then our longtime beloved support for these sessions and sessions like these, Elizabeth von Holland. So, with that, I want to welcome our featured guest, Norma. Norma, welcome to the EcoDharma Explorations. Welcome to our community. How are you?
Aloha, aloha, Kristen. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me in. I'm well. I'm sitting here in Kalihi Valley on the island of Oahu in the Hawaiian Islands. Today is it's at the beginning of the day, so we are a bit behind uh, rest of the places that you are calling in from. So if you're familiar with Pacific time, whatever Pacific time is in the United States, we're either 2 or 3 hours behind that, um, depending upon what time of year it is. So here we are. Thank you for having me.
Here we are indeed. Yeah, and one of the reasons that we were really excited to invite you is a recent book that you released called When No Thing Works, a Zen and Indigenous perspective on resilience, shared purpose, leadership in the time of collapse. And in reading this book, I just really loved the unresolvability of everything that you were offering. There were no firm places to for me to land and go, that's the answer, you know? And neither was it yeah, it wasn't positive answers, it wasn't negative answers, it was just a space. I felt very much like I was in a place of practice with you. So I really want to thank you for that work in particular. Um, and we'll share links to that book here at the end. I don't want to distract folks to go off and chase that down right now. But I guess I just want to start out by saying thank you for that book, and please, like, whatever else feels important to share in a time where, I'll quote from the book, there's a lot going on.
Well, The part about things occurring in the world is that they always have, and sometimes we are paying acute attention to them, and sometimes we ignore that which is occurring. But we are certainly at a moment where it is impossible for us to look away. And it is also very important that we don't look away. But who are we? Who are the people who are going to not only witness this moment, but be the agents for the next moment? That is the potent question before us, and one that we would invite all beings to be a part of that question. So, Kristen, is your community? This is the first time I've been here into this particular community. Are they open to a few minutes of practice before we just get into, the talk of things?
Welcome that. Absolutely.
Okay. Right. So I would welcome you if you would find your place, whether it's sitting or standing, and that you place yourself in the most dignified position that you can. If you're sitting, that if you're sitting on the floor as I am, that you could feel the bottom under you, but release the tension that you might have in your hips. If you're sitting in a chair, that you make sure that both feet are firmly planted on the ground, that they are about hip width apart from each other, that the balls of your feet and the big toe have the most pressure of all the parts of the feet, which is the same as you would want to do as if you were standing. To just have that part of the ball of your feet and the big toe. And as you inhale, that it releases its attention. And as you exhale, that it puts a little more pressure into the ground, not as to squash the ground or squash your feet, but have that sense that the energy is moving beyond your body and into the ground, and beyond the ground into the center of the earth. That you feel the energy emanating from the top of your head. And what that does is it lengthens your spine just naturally. And you're releasing any tension that is not necessary to hold you in a dignified posture. And the energy emanating from your hands, your left and your right, released of tension. From the balls of your feet into the sky of your head, from your hands, left and right. Especially on the exhale, but do not lose connection on the inhale. The lungs just opening up naturally because the exhale has pushed so much out. And as you're exhaling, you feel that place that is below your belly button, your pico. And in that place, the breath is now emanating. And now from that 6 points, your feet, your hands, top of your head, and below your belly button. and connected internally and externally at the same time. You're going to take a breath and exhale, and let there be sound on the exhale. And inhale again. And make sure that you exhale with sound. Notice that the mouth has to be open for there to be true sound. Except if we are going to hum, and then the lips are closed. And we take the inhale and hum. Mm. And again, take a breath and hum. Take another breath and hum. Okay, take a breath, and we're going to just shake it out. Okay, so take a breath, bring your hands up in the air, and exhale. Hey, shake it out. Thank you, Kristen.
Oh, thank you for that practice. Yeah, so just inviting everyone to settle into a place of receiving as I'll turn it over to Norma again. She'll just share some thoughts. So good to be with you all. And yeah, I just welcome you, Norma, to share your thoughts and what eco Dharma exploration um, you would like to offer today.
Well, Kristen, you said that you had a chance to read the book. And what was it that you were most curious about?
Mm. Yeah, well, it was I think for me this m- progressive movement into the arc of coming into a crisis collapse, kind of where we seem to be flirting with that. And um, I think it felt very tender to me and alive, that progression of encountering the crisis and then being at various thresholds, like you named horizon points, um, as a kind of like very much sense of being in relationship with what I think you call time place, and we're here and we know a different time is coming, and yet I felt very much invited to occupy where I am in relationship to that. So it's this, I feel like this whole, one of the central challenges of eco-dharma is that relationship to time and the anticipatory nature of anxiety itself, climate anxiety. So I wonder if you could start with that maybe so many of us struggle with, the climate anxiety, and how the book supports, how your teaching supports us in turning towards that, but also remaining present.
That's a so let's take that inquiry and uh, the from the perspective of people who are more ancient than us. Okay? And so I think that part of our anxiety is that we live in such modernity, and we have like essentially separated ourselves from the part of our cellular memory that has come to us from ancient people, has come to us from ancestors. So we have the existence of the current moment, and this is what's in front of us. And we have siloed ourselves off from other parts of our existence that still exist, right? So they're in our cellular memory. They're in the parts of us that are unconscious. But, this is EcoDharma, right? So in the Dharma part of this is that the part of the practice of the long meditative paths is to open up the parts of our consciousness that would otherwise be separated from each other. That's a part of what the practice is all about. So when we enter into the deepest states of our meditation, there is a way in which we could feel that the time place has shifted. And that time place is shifted only because our consciousness has opened up. And then we come out of the meditative state and we're on Earth One once again. But as a factual matter, not as a metaphysical matter, all of those parts of the time state are available to us all the time if only we were in that state. Okay? It's not as if the world were in that state, but as if we are in that state. Then all of those aspects of consciousness are available to us, and time place will mean something else. So, a part of what the book is hoping to do is to put into lay people's, people who have no practice at all, a sense of what is in actual existence that we may not have a consciousness towards. And because we don't have a consciousness towards it, we can't be agents in it. We can't be, we can't have the possibilities of being a part of our own change. But if we are in that consciousness, then we can move, and I would say, as our ancestors did. So in this room, filled with many peoples, and I would guess most of whom would not be able to necessarily say that they are indigenous. You are descendants of indigenous people nonetheless. And if you cannot say that you're indigenous today, that it is only because your indigeneity was interrupted so long ago that you cannot culturally or historically say or politically say that you are indigenous, but you are descendants nonetheless. And what that means is that somewhere back, far back, recessively, not dominantly, but recessively in your cellular memory, there will be a part of ancient people's experience with the earth and with other beings and with other humans that would be different than what your relationship is right now. And coming back into that relationship on an experiential basis, on a consciousness basis, not just on a sociological or political understanding basis, is what's necessary if we are to reshape our balance, right? If we are to come more into an agency around right relationship. And right relationship, that is about the gyroscope of it all, not about the political correctness of it all. So we're in that urgency of that moment because of the acceleration of things in this moment. Yeah, there's a Polynesian navigator. So in Polynesia, we had an interrupted history of navigation across the Pacific without the use of instruments. So only through the use of our ancient ties and knowledge, right? The wisdom that would have been accumulated over generations of that how it is that we might be able to determine where we are in the Pacific by virtue of the stars at different times of the year, of the currents, right? Of the ways in which the animals of the Polynesia would move, and taking all of that data into account, knowing where it is that you are and how to get from one place to another place. And we would travel across the vast Pacific, and we did that. And that was interrupted at some point, and actually interrupted before Western contact. And so we went for 600 or 700 years before Western contact, where that particular art was lost on a long arc basis. Long arc meaning that you would be able to travel, say, 2,500 or 3,000 miles. So out of sight of land for 3 to 4 weeks, or even 5 weeks, we'd still be able to get from one place to another. And that was interrupted. And as it was regained, as that wisdom and knowledge was regained, that it became first into the headspace of people. In other words, they had to memorize it in their mind. And then over time, for some of the people, they came to actually be able to come from it from a more nuanced state, from a more intuitive state, right? Where that which they were memorizing in their mind would come into their body. And because this knowledge was regained is part of how it is I know that in modern times, that which has been interrupted can be regained. And it can be regained by tapping into that which had been known and is now being reacquainted with in modern times. And a way that that works is actually to come very much into the sensory experience of Earth itself in modern times. So, not to shy away from the floods, not to shy away from the storms. A Polynesian navigator, a modern Polynesian navigator who passed a few years ago, and so he's now our ancestor. when he was asked the question, are you are you disturbed? Are you upset by climate change? And he stopped and he thought about it. He said, I don't give much thought to climate change at all, Sid, because climate has always been changing. It's just changing differently now. And that if we are not evolving with those changes and adjusting with those changes, then shame on us. But shame on us. No, it's undeniable to some that humans are not responsible for a good portion of climate change. But it is deniable by some, by many even, that how can that possibly be so? But whether you accept it or you deny it, it's undeniable that the climate is indeed not normal from what it is we thought were the norms. But if we thought that something was a norm, it only means that we were fixed on a particular norm. Okay? We didn't shift our consciousness to keep up with the shift in the norm. We're caught by surprise that there is a storm that is bigger than what we said is usual. We call it an unusual storm. But something is unusual only if we are measuring it against something that no longer exists. If something is unusual and it happens now, not only many times a year, but many times a month or many times a week, then that is now the norm. And that is now the norm that we should not passively accept, but with agency evolve to be in relationship to. Right? Do our part to not make it worse, but certainly also do our part to not live in a way in which we deny it and therefore are not prepared for it, not prepared to be in harm's way, not prepared to help our neighbors who are either prepared as we are because we're in relationship to them, in community with them, or not prepared and therefore they're our neighbors and we should be in relationship to them nonetheless, right? So it's coming more in relationship with that the times call for. And frankly speaking, we have to increase the level of our evolution as humans in order to meet the moment.
Yeah, so, on that particular note, there's a in the book you talk about, um, this a lot of us have heard, I know I've heard many times in my life that the Chinese character for crisis is danger and opportunity, right? And you describe it as a critical juncture when and where change begins. And then you go on to say, contextually, the ancient wisdom of this that is that there can be no big leaps without risk and the presence of the unknown. So talk about that critical juncture and then this notion of leap, because that feels to me like it's bringing in the agency that you're speaking of right now. The leap is not imposed, it arises from within, and in maybe in response to that critical juncture.
So, literally, the Chinese character is made up of three characters. Okay? Chinese are wily people, which I can say because, part of me has that as ancestry. Right? We just, what makes Chinese wily is that we've been pondering things for a long time. Okay? That's what makes us wily. And that the but wily not in a coyote version of wily, right? Which you may remember from cartoon moments rather than out in nature. So the aspects of the character for crisis is that it's made up of three characters, and that one of the characters, which is the middle character, if set aside and looked at by itself, means critical threshold. Okay. So a crisis presents itself as a critical threshold. And it is literally when very few things are working or things are not working the way that you have an expectation of working. When things are not normal for long periods of time, it's the only time when a critical mass of people might be able to do something that is in opposition to their own norm, which is what a leap is. Right? So, even the most adventurous of us will have a set of habit patterns. And so you'd say people who live their life with reckless abandon only know how to live their life with reckless abandon. So to do something with reckless abandon would not be a leap for a person who lives their life with reckless abandon. To stand still, to take a look at everything would be a leap for a person who lives their life with reckless abandon. Okay. So each of us has a set of habit patterns that establish our norm as to how it is we behave, how we think, how we make our decisions, regulates all aspects of our life. And what makes it a habit is it's unconscious. And it is generally reactive to situations. And it repeats itself over and over again. This is a moment when you're on a threshold, when nothing works. This is a moment that calls actually for consciousness rather than unconsciousness. So, an interruption of the habit pattern is necessary if we are to make any leaps at all. We actually have to pay attention and then interrupt the reactive aspects that are coming up within us. Okay. The habit pattern of going to ground, or the habit pattern of taking care of ourselves first. In some ways, you could say nationalism is a country's habit pattern in a time of crisis to take care of itself and to defend itself in its entirety as a thing that a country would do. Okay? And so it can arise even in a country that is one of the inventors of democracy, not the inventor, by the way, but one of. It can happen even in a country that is one of the inventors of democracy. That you would have to interrupt the habit pattern if we are to leap and become rather than say, we know everything. And therefore, we can just recede, right? We can just come into the protection of our own selves. In a moment of maximum chaos, some of our own making and some that is not, right? Some that is not. Some that is just the energy pattern that is circulating throughout the universe right now, okay, as shift accelerates. Scientists say that the outward movement of the universe is accelerating. As a person whose instrument is not as sensitive as that which scientists use, we may not be able to consciously feel the acceleration, but we're subject to it nonetheless. If it's in the universe, it's happening to us. We are subject to things that we can feel and see and things that we cannot feel and see. That doesn't mean we don't have agency. We have agency if we're conscious and we use our senses and interrupt the mind's tendency to interfere with that. Okay. So I'm going to pause here because,
Yeah.
I
So
come from the people of the long story. I could talk forever.
well, I appreciate that, right? And it actually that has to do with my next question because it feels like we're right in it where so in this time where our agency, we talk a lot on the One Earth Sangha team about sort of the 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 crisis of agency, this sort of poverty of agency that we might feel. I'm just one person. What can I do? Right. And some would say like don't be one person, right? Like join with others, right? Is no small part of an answer to that. But still, even in your book, I'm going to read another quote from it that feels like it's right here in what you're speaking about. We are the amateur not ready for the circus jugglers, dropping many balls and plates and fire swords, yet tantalized by possibility nonetheless. So here's the crisis. Here's the sense of there is a calling for maybe a leap like response within me. And yet here are my habits, right? And am I gonna leap just in a familiar way that actually isn't going to fully be that full appropriate response, that full alignment with what is really called for. And in your book, you talk about the role of practice and choice as being ways that we can work with our habits to have a leap, that leap that is attuned. So I both want to ask you to kind of fill out that picture for us, but also like how might we sense that right here for ourselves? How can we embody that so that it's not it is a conceptual understanding, but it's something, it's a capacity that my body might be able to remember somehow.
So we say your body remembers and your mind gets in the way, right? Uh, uh, and in all of that, nonetheless, spirit endures. So when spirit comes into a low state, right? It's a right. We a shadow casts over us, and so there's this part where the first thing we have agency over is whether we stand in the shade or whether we meet the light. That's really the first aspect of agency. So I would say to my students, for example, that uh, everything can feel like there's darkness and despair, and that you're in a cave. The definition of the cave is there's an opening. So put your back to the back of the cave and face the opening of the cave. Even if you cannot bear yet to walk out into the light, face the light. You have to uh, coax yourself into a more generative space. And it is extraordinarily difficult to do that if you're trying to do it by yourself. So I say that beings, even hermits who live in caves, are intended to be social creatures. Why else would hermits who live in caves write poems about loneliness? Okay? Because if they were okay with just being hermits in the cave, they wouldn't know anything about loneliness. Okay? So we're intended to be in relationship. I am an introvert, so I like to be party adjacent. Okay? People can have their big fun with each other, and I'm in the next room and I can hear them. I'm happy. Okay? But I need to be adjacent nonetheless, or I'll be caught up in my own stuff. Right? As a practical matter, we also have limited lifting of things if we're only going to lift it by ourselves. But now is a time not to count on institutions to do the lifting for us. Okay? Community is what's called for. And community is more than just a group of individuals. Community are people who are in interwoven relationship with each other. That we would have a sense of care and possibility with each other, even if we're not the people who go and ask, well, what's your name? And my name is this. I'm not one of those people. There are neighbors that I have lived with now for almost 20 years, whose names I do not know, and yet we are very close. We share mangoes. My neighbor tells me that, so sorry, tomorrow night his grandson is going to have his graduation party at their house. And so it will be loud and noisy until 10:30. And then I will shut it down. I will shut it down. Right? And my neighbor, whose name I don't remember, because he always tells me his name like very quick, very fast, and he slurs it. You know, he slurs it. And so I don't ever get a sense of what his name is. And yet I know my neighbor and my neighbor knows me because we are in relationship with each other. That isolation in modern times is like a thing, right? And then we reinforce that with the technology. And we think of technology as being a substitute rather than a tool. Okay? On a cold night, a shovel is not much use. So why would we look to our mobile device for comfort? Okay? So yes, community is part of what it is we need to do, but in community, we all hold up our own. And therefore, when we join together, we hold up each other and we're more than a sum of our parts. So to ask of others affirmation in order for us to be real or important or seen is an affliction that we have imposed upon ourselves. Okay? We cannot depend on affirmation from others for our own worthiness or rules to determine whether or not we are whole, right? That's one of the leaps we need to make right now. That's a leap. In full agency, in community, we are invincible, but that does not mean we will win. There's a difference between the two. Okay? But certainly work for invincibility while you're working on the win, or there will be no us on the other side of the calamity. So, the interruption of this necessity to be affirmed by others, this notion of independence, which is a thing that comes in Western countries that we have exported to other countries. Individualism is a habit. It has become our political birthright, but is not serving us right now. It is not serving us. No, go
Well,
ahead.
I just wonder how we can take that, right now, if I can, um, ask, is there an inquiry, a practice that, we go into the breakout rooms and, um, with that sense of we're gonna do something together, we're gonna practice together. Here in the cave, looking out towards the light, remembering something that maybe the body knows where the purpose of the practice is to cultivate that remembering of agency, that courage to take the leap, perhaps towards community itself for some, for the introvert maybe, like, of which I also count myself. For others, it's a deeper connection maybe with body or whatever. What is an inquiry that we can offer to the community here as we go into breakout rooms, and they can do maybe in triads, the stool that you talk about in your book, of when there are three together, that's a platform. Something stable can be established there. So whether it's two or three or four in a breakout room, what's an inquiry that we can practice with here as a community that will help us remember that wise agency that lives here, that has that wisdom of, maybe I'm not going to win, but I'm going to be cultivating invincibility, or I'm going to remember we are best when we can share the load.
It's about identifying the habit that keeps you from your true self. So if we put it in those terms, right, which I can in this realm, because these are people of practice, right? So if you're a person of practice, then you know that the true self exists. And the only thing that is keeping you from you is you. So, what is the habit that is keeping you from your true self that you are ready to set aside? And the practice that you will cultivate that would move you towards like the way in which you would be having more agency over what is really important to you. And then you need to name it. So, which is to say, free floating anxiety in which there is no actual purpose you are moving agency towards will only keep you in free floating anxiety. Okay. So you have to name that thing that is important to you, for which you would interrupt a habit and cultivate a practice towards. So that's what I would invite people to.
Yeah, so maybe we can, does that feel clear enough to folks? Like that what I'm hearing you say is, the inquiry is, what is the habit that I have that is sort of keeping me out of alignment, interrupting my alignment with my true self, and that place from which uh, a beautiful leap might emerge. Is that one way of putting it? Does that, or please rephrase? Your words are better than mine.
Yes, that is that's case. But that in the time of if you unless you name the purpose. So if you're not going to name the practice, that's fine. But you have to name the purpose, because if you don't name the purpose, then you're just going to stay in a like like in a circle around, I interrupt my habit and then I don't move anywhere. Okay?
Mm.
All right. So you have to name it.
Ah, so name the heart's longing. What is it that I feel called to express or do, body, speak to?
Yes.
And then maybe a compliment would be, and what is the habit that can interrupt that I want to be in
Yeah.
conscious relationship with?
Right. So the habit, right? And what I call a purpose, which the purpose can therefore be the name of your big leap, right? Okay. The purpose can be the name of your big leap.
What it in, and you don't have, no rehearsal. What does the body want to name as the leap? What am I called to do? What what does this heart out want to respond? And then as the purpose, and then what are the habits that can come in that thwart that? Oh, there you are again, right? And so we come into conscious relationship with both of those. And maybe you can really listen deeply to each other, really support that, each other, and support the spontaneous expression of your heart. Let it be messy. Doesn't have to be perfectly presented. Yeah. Let it be really intuitively, and let's really practice together. Really, really appreciate everyone for your practice, for your presence, for being here. And this is we're in the space of generosity already. Norma offering her teachings here, and Nikayla and Elizabeth and all the people who support Wonder Sangha and make this container possible is in the place of generosity. That's what's arising out of, and that's a beautiful tradition that we're inside. So want to invite your generosity to the extent that you're able and it makes sense and there's no right amount. That's part of the practice. Um, so you just discover what the right amount is. Some of you gave as part of your registration already, and we really appreciate that and want to invite you now to explicitly support Norma and her teachings. The places, collective acceleration, which thank you, Elizabeth, just put into the chat. Collective acceleration, really, like if you have time, her book, No When No Thing Works, is really it was quite provocative and helpful for me in terms of like, yeah, feeling this sense of being in the unresolvability of it all, and yet in no way helpless, but asking me to come from a very different place than maybe Western culture has conditioned this mind um, to take as fundamental and possible and like the parameters of the problem. So yeah, let's expand the parameters of the problem together with help from folks like Norma. And then, just to say that we're inside of the series that I mentioned before, in collaboration with Spirit Rock. We have some upcoming EDEs, EcoDharma explorations on August 24th. Dr. Leslie Gray, super excited about that. A Tree of Peace and the Power of Remembering Indigenous Design of American Remembering the Indigenous Design of American Democracy. Actually, Norma alluded to this earlier. It wasn't just the white dudes uh, in Pennsylvania who were coming up with this stuff. They were actually learning from many other Native peoples here on Turtle Island. So, really invite you to join us for that. And then in September, some of you here may know a teacher beloved to me, Conda Mason, will be our September EcoDharma exploration. So, I should have said about the Leslie Gray EcoDharma exploration. That one will be hosted by Braided Wisdom. If you haven't heard about Braided Wisdom, really encourage you to check them out. And they are our lovely partner. I'm so happy to be in partnership with them and Spirit Rock. So there we have it. Good dear Sangha. Really good to be with you. And to my colleagues, Elizabeth and Nikayla, did I leave anything out, or can we do the dedication of merit? Okay. Well, just big thank you again, Norma. Thank you so much for your work in the world and for this book and for coming and joining our space today and sharing from your deep multi-lineages perspectives and from the land of Hawaii. So really, thank you to all your teachers and your parents and all the critters and beings that keep you alive and thriving there on the island. So with that, we will dedicate the merit. Deep gratitude to the Sangha, to all of the causes and conditions, the myriad of beings, ancestors, ecological, family, all who have supported you in arriving here and the ways in which you contribute to our community. Really deep thank you. And may any goodness that has come to us, any inspiration, any guidance, any support, may we not hold on to it tightly, let it nourish us deeply, but then turn it out back onto this aching world. And with that, we dedicate the merit and offer this prayer. May all places be held sacred. May all beings be cherished. May all injustices of oppression, devaluation, and theft be fully righted, remedied, and healed. May all who are captured by hatred be free to the love that is all of our birthright. May all who are bound by fear discover the safety of understanding. May all who are weighed down by grief be given over to the joy of just being. May all who are lost in delusion find a home on the path of wisdom. May all wounds to forests, rivers, deserts, oceans, all wounds to Mother Earth be lovingly restored to bountiful health. May all beings everywhere delight in whale song and bird song and blue sky. May all beings abide in peace and well-being, awaken and be free.